Hello, my name is Dr. Julie Yu, and I teach at Kansas State University. It is my honor, and I'm so excited to be a part of the University of North Florida Jacksonville SINGS Virtual Week. Today I'm going to share a few ideas with you that I have about trying to incorporate the whole person into the choral rehearsal, and that's engaging the mind, the spirit, and the voice. You probably remember the term cognitive dissonance from your education classes. It's really something I try to achieve with my students for every rehearsal that we have. I once had a piano teacher tell me, "You don't pay me enough to listen to you practice." I once played my scales for this person, and I played them perfectly. And she said, "Okay, now play C major in your right hand and G major in your left hand." And I did, and I got through it, and I was very proud of myself. Then she said, "Play C major in your right hand, G major in your left hand, and sing E flat major on solfege." And I did. And by this time I was struggling. But I still got through it. And then she added another layer and said, "With your foot, stomp, da, 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 while you're playing C major in your right hand, G major in your left hand, and singing E flat major on solfege." Of course, by this time I was curled in a fetal position crying, and I knew I couldn't do it. But it was at that moment she stood over me and she said, "Now you're learning something. Before, you just showed me what you already knew, but I've taken you to a place where you don't know." And she said, "That's when you learn." There's an NPR quiz show that I really enjoy listening to. It's called Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. And on this show, they once had the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson on this show. And they bring on famous people to participate in silly little quizzes, usually 3 questions long, that have nothing to do with their area of expertise. And the reason I bring this up is because something happened during this quiz show that has completely changed the way I've thought about education, and especially about the way choral rehearsals can run. So in this interview, the host, Peter Sagal, asks Neil deGrasse Tyson questions about cosmetology, which of course has nothing to do with his area of expertise. And Neil deGrasse Tyson gets 2 of the 3 questions wrong. And so you can see here a transcript of what transpired between the 2. I'll jump to the end where Neil deGrasse Tyson says, "I look at it differently. I look at, had I gotten all 3 questions right, I would have learned nothing. But having gotten 2 wrong, I learned 2 new things today." In our rehearsals, we often try to search for being right and singing right notes and rhythms and correct pronunciation and all these things. But what I've tried to do in my lessons is to try to have the students learn 2 new things during that rehearsal. And often to discover something like that, you have to be willing to go places where you're okay with them not getting the correct answer, but it's about the process of learning. Lessons can be simple in your rehearsal. In this case, I've just taken a Google spreadsheet and created these colored squares with numbers in them, all corresponding to an activity that the students will do. I stole this from another teacher, of course. And you can see here in the first red square that there are 5 claps. And then in the second square to the right, you see 2 blue woo, and then 3 stomps, so on and so on. While keeping a metronome, students would then clap 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Woo, woo, stomp, stomp, stomp. Shoulder brush, shoulder brush, shoulder brush, shoulder brush. And they would keep this going in whatever pattern you wanted to do, a snake figure or down then up, right to left, left to right. But it's amazing how many different combinations I can get them to do by this simple thing that was created in the spreadsheet. It's very easy to think that we have to invest in textbooks and complex lessons to engage the singer's minds, but often all we need is right in front of us. I just saw a post on Facebook that said, if you haven't done 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, then you really aren't a choral student. And so I often hear this exercise being done by teachers. And as you can see here, I have listed do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So this exercise I often hear teachers doing, and the students just fly through them, singing with the most atrocious vowels, imperfect tuning, and of course, no thought being put into the exercise at all. So what we need to think about is the adage of ideal practice, practicing with all of the elements that we expect our students to do in their repertoire. You might have heard a phrase saying, practice does not make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. But again, perfect is the enemy of good. What we're trying to strive for is that our students are engaged and they're learning something by reaching resistance in their brains. And so in this case, we might take this exercise and reformat it to challenge them. So let's say, what if we did where you snapped on do, and then you stopped every time you sang mi, and then you didn't sing sol, right? And that would take it to a complete another level of this exercise rather than them just going through it robotically. And finally, this exercise doesn't mean anything if it's not put into context, if that we don't show them in their repertoire or throughout their music making that resolutions and functional harmony and things like that exist. If this exercise is done just by itself out of context, then we're not doing the students any favors of why did we even do it? Sometimes a rehearsal will go by and I think, that went well, or I'm sure the students learned something in that rehearsal, but often it's a blur. And one way that we have to stay honest and true to ourselves about are we engaging the students' minds and are we engaging our own is to have these methods of self-assessment and staying true to oneself. One way you can do that is to record your rehearsals and your performances and watch them. I know it's really hard to try to fit this into our schedules, and it's more difficult to not be overcritical of ourselves and to see every little thing that we do wrong. But recording ourselves is the only way that we can really see what the students see. Our instrumental counterparts use the metronome far more than we singers do, and the metronome is definitely a way to keep us honest. When your students are sight singing, set the metronome because that will tell them where they are struggling. And struggling is good. Struggling means that they're learning. And so we try not to use the words mistakes in our rehearsals. The only time we make a mistake is when we purposefully create harm for someone else. But instead we say, that was a great attempt, you guys. You really tried. And this time, think of some more strategies so that you can maybe make some strides in improvement. I'm a pianist by trade, and so I use the piano a lot, especially when I feel like I'm in trouble. I'll turn to the piano. But what I've tried to do is not to use the piano in rehearsal, especially when I need to hear the students. Even if you're working with an incredibly talented collaborative pianist, sometimes it's great just to have a no piano section of rehearsal or the whole rehearsal because it's amazing what that instrument can cover up that's going on in the room. And finally, I bring up the subject of conducting. This is something that a lot of students returning to master's programs and such want more lessons on conducting and things like that. But again, if you record yourself and if you use that imagination to show what you think should be present visually in the music that you have in your minds that will be presented orally, then just stand in front of a mirror and have fun and play around with it and try to show how the music is represented linearly, vertically, and using all elements of your pivot points and your facial expressions and your body. Thank you so much to Dr. Cara Tasher and the University of North Florida School of Music for hosting this virtual week. And I hope that you'll all keep in touch and know that everyone is rooting for you and is so grateful for all that you do.